Good evening and welcome to the second part of the Global Tipping Point Summit on Rethinking Parenting. The GTPS, the Global Tipping Point Summit, began with 3 pre-summit events, one in August, one in September, and a youth forum in October. We then had the Education Summit from the 20th of November to the 13th of December. And now the Parenting Summit, the inauguration of which was on 8th of January. We have been extremely fortunate to get a very, very heartening response. Thank you for all the wonderful people we have assembled here today. I am Dr. Kumi S. Vevaina, the founder director of the Global Tipping Point Summit. In 2016, I retired as a head of the Department of English, University of Mumbai. I'm known as a literary critic, a teacher educator, a storyteller, and education futurist. And most important, someone who is passionate about learning and teaching. When we began thinking of the Global Tipping Point Summit, we thought it should be a unique summit. It should be different from the run-of-the-mill summits. Of course, a lot of very important work happens at all workshops and seminars, but we wanted to create a visible change as a result of this summit. So we first began by thinking of the themes, and then we found the speakers. In our desire to make the whole thing extremely relevant to educators as well as parents, we took a kind of survey poll. And we found that there were certain themes that were common and parents were genuinely concerned about those. And then we found wonderful speakers for the same. Father Joe Pereira began the first academic session with his brilliant talk on addictions, after which the renowned environmentalist, Mr. Bittu Saigal, talked about the need for cultivating compassion and empathy in children and making them feel their connection with the earth at a very early age. We then had Ms. Suzanne Rodrigues from the UAE talk about nurturing creativity in little children, and the principal of the Gateway School, Ms. Varsha Makija, who spoke on differently abled children. We then moved on to a very interesting session yesterday on cyber wellness. And today we have the world-renowned speaker, scientist, and educator, Mr. Shradhalu Ranade, who's going to talk to us about integral parenting. Today is a very special session because we also have a special guest speaker, Father Gottfried D'Souza, who's going to talk about something extremely important, anxiety and depression in the COVID and post-COVID era. We will conclude the summit next week with 2 equally interesting sessions, one on the scars of shaming by the neuropsychologist, Ms. Mahera Desai of the Jasloke Hospital, and Mr. Mark McLeod from Australia, who is going to talk about the way in which we can sensitize children to social justice issues. So please attend as many or all of the sessions because every session is unique and important. This particular summit, as I said, is conceptualized differently. And I'll quickly run you through the idea with the help of a diagram. At the center is the speaker. The speaker, who's marked in red here, speaks for about 25 to 30 minutes, after which we have the 4 change facilitators also address the audience briefly. These 4 people have been liaising with the speaker over months, and they've come up with an interesting action project. They are willing to give 3 hours of training, each of them, entirely free to anyone who's interested. So we urge you to please sign Google Forms, which are available on our website, www.gtps4change.org. and step in as action group members. After receiving the training from these wonderful facilitators, you create your own groups and you go out into the world to actually be the change that you wish to see in the world. So this is the concept of the summit. It is an action-oriented summit. At the end of the summit next January, we hope for a progress report, an impact report, and we will move on to the next GTPS summit. We want to make GTPS an annual event. So please join us in our desire to make visible change. Certainly, a summit of this magnitude could not have been handled by me alone. I need to thank so many people. 108 people have been working with me, and it will not be possible for me to name all 108 of them. But I'll start with the advisory committee. The advisory committee, which comprises Dr. Firoza Godrej, Mr. Noshir Kurodi, Mr. Noshir Dadrawala, Mr. Sanjay Rastogi of Tata Trend, Dr. Shehnaz Kama, Mr. Yazdi Tantra, Ms. Devika Chatterjee, Ms. Rakhi Chabria, and Ms. Fiona Reynolds. The core committee has supported me hugely, starting with my summit coordinator, Ms. Donna Reen. Donna has been working shoulder to shoulder with me for over 18 months on this summit. A very special thank you to you, Donna. Also, I owe thanks to Mr. Yazdi Tantra, Ms. Deepa Soman, Mr. Milind Soman, Mr. Glenn Concessio, and Mr. Bhavin Shah of Education World and Parent World. We have partnered with Tata Trent, Tantra Tech, K-Merck, Lumiere Business Solutions, Education World, Parent World, Penn Ultimate, for Teachers Help Teachers, First Moms Club, and Wolves. The initial video that you saw for 1 minute before we began has been created by Wolves. I also owe thanks to all the amazing luminaries who have supported us, starting with the Dalai Lama. A day before the Education Summit began, we received this long letter from the Dalai Lama. His Holiness says in the first paragraph of the letter, I am pleased to know about the Global Tipping Point Summit and its focus on improving the present education system so that our younger generation can become more responsible citizens of the planet. We also received a goodwill message from the founder of the Isha Foundation, Sadhguru. Sadhguru's team sent us this message. We are touched by GTPS's initiative to empower the youth to be well equipped during these challenging times, and we are happy to share some of the quotes from Sadhguru to be a part of it. Lieutenant General Shokin Chauhan, recipient of 5 Presidential Distinguished Merit Awards, has also given us a letter of support, as has Mr. Kersi Chowda, one of the leading psychiatrists in India today. Shri M, known to the world as a spiritual guide, social reformer, educationist, and Padma Bhushan awardee, has also written a letter supporting the summit. We've also had a whole lot of media people who have very, very genuinely supported the summit, starting with Mr. Cyrus Brocha and Mr. Baman Irani, both of whom did a podcast with me. Cyrus is known to the world as a TV artist, theater personality, comedian, podcaster, and author. And Mr. Baman Irani as theater and film actor, voice artist, and photographer. Mr. Mickey Mehta, global leading holistic health guru, corporate life coach, and founder of the Grow Green program, has also hailed the GTPS summit, as has Rageshwari Lumba Swaru, motivational speaker, actor, singer, and author. And last but not the least, Mr. Shamak Dava, internationally renowned choreographer, singer, performer, and entertainment director. I have an amazingly powerful team of people who have been working with me, and I need to thank at least some of them. The design team, comprising Rhea Soman, Disha Upreti, Janavi Kulkarni, Rohan Signigar, the organizing team of Shahrukh Vevaina, Dr. Nina Nair, Shalanta Mascarenas, Valerie Mendonça, Nagma Sheikh, Mustaq Sheikh, and Madhu Nair. And importantly, the technical team of Pezan Charna, Ashish Kadam, Disha Poddar, and Neha Vatsala, our social media person. And with this, I hand over the session to the professional speaker, engineer, educator, and author, Mr. Meher Amalsad from the USA, who will be guiding us through this session. Welcome, Meher, and over to you.
You need to unmute yourself, Meher.
Yazdi, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Vivena, for inviting me to anchor this very special session on parenting for GTPS. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are you all doing today? Are you ready to have some fun? Okay, then let's start with a high five on the screen to have some fun together. My name is Meher Amalsad, and I am anchoring from California. I am an engineer, educator, professional speaker, and author of Bread for the Head, a book designed to create motivation for the mind, inspiration for the heart, and transformation for the soul. I believe that the purpose of life is to live a life of purpose, and my life's focus has been on building a consciousness of righteousness through the spirit of unity within diversity in humanity. That, to me, is happiness through oneness. And it is that consciousness of oneness that inspired me to become a part of this International Global Tipping Point Summit, which is designed to usher visible changes in our education and parenting systems. And with that sentiment, ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to welcome our featured speaker for this session titled Integral Parenting. Shraddhalu Ranade is a scientist, educator, researcher, and scholar at the Sri Aurobindo Ashram in Pondicherry, India, where he grew up in care of late Sri M.P. Pandit, from whom he received his training in the theory and practice of integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. He has been deeply involved in educational research and teacher training programs for over 20 years and has conducted intensive teacher training workshops in integral education as well as value-based education in India and abroad. Over 5,000 teachers from more than 220 schools and colleges all across India have benefited from these valuable programs. His widely acclaimed book titled Introduction to Integral Education is considered a compulsory reading in many schools. He has seamlessly integrated his multi-specialty in physics, mathematics, and computer sciences with his philosophical, metaphysical, and spiritual studies. He has been deeply involved in research projects including artificial intelligence based on neural networks, multimedia search and retrieval, image and video processing, as well as assorted simulation tools. He has also been extensively involved in software development and hardware design for over 25 years. And for about 10 years, he also has engaged in media development, including television programming. He has traveled all over the world delivering lectures and conducting workshops on integral education, management by consciousness, esoteric sciences, self-development, the integral yoga, and spiritual practices. He firmly believes that the world is transitioning into a new paradigm of living based on a new model of spiritual consciousness. And with that spirited sentiment, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a warm humanitarian welcome to our very own scientist, educator, and scholar of international repute, Shradhalu Ranade.
Thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome. The theme before us today is parenting, and the title I set was Integral Parenting, because this word integral is very special. It's not holistic, it's more than that. Holistic would include everything. Holistic healing is taking into account all parts. But integral is integrating the whole around a central principle. And it goes beyond holism. Integral parenting, therefore, has integrality in two different aspects which are complementing each other. And I wish to present here a kind of a broad overview with some special indications of how you can put this into practice immediately. Given the time that we have, we cannot really go in depth, but a broad framework and the principles of this whole approach will be enough to get you started. And this will be followed by 4 of our action trainers who will each take up one of 4 different specialized aspects of this theme. Integrality is in 2 aspects, as I said. First, in the way you approach your child. As a parent, that's your first responsibility. But there's also integrality in the way you approach the child. And we will dwell upon both of these. But we begin first with the child. How do you see your child? How do you relate to your child? What does the child mean to you? Based on your answers to these questions will be the responsibility you hold and the way you fulfill that responsibility. If you look upon the child as merely an accidental gift, perhaps, well, you would have a different relationship. If you saw your child as a conscious invocation that you called for and were given as a gift and for whom you are ready to commit your whole life, well, you have a very different relationship, isn't it? But if you see the child merely as another being who's going through a normal course of education and then will take a conventional job, well, there's not much that you need to do. If you leave the child alone and not interfere, he or she will find her way and fulfill her journey. But there's something more profound. This is what you see in nature. When animals give birth to children, they look after them, nourish them until the children are reasonably independent and they fly off from the nest and are on their own. But there's something much more profound, which is part of our human nature. The human nature is not satisfied with just nourishment and giving independence. The human nature values what we have inherited through our ancestors, through our civilizational efforts of our ancestors. And the best of that which we have been able to gather, which is something so precious, often representing a distillation of perhaps hundreds or thousands of years of effort of millions of people, each passing on the best that they can to the next generation. And we are as if inheritors of this legacy. And we are not satisfied unless we are able to transmit this to our children. You will see your first instinct as a parent is, I want to give the best to my child. Where does this come from? And what does this best mean? When we introspect on this, we are not too sure. I just know I have to do my best in giving my best. And what is that? At the root of this impulse is a profound relationship that you already have with the child, of which you may not be fully conscious. On a very superficial level, you feel the child as if a part of yourself projected out. Visibly, this is what happens in the mother's experience. the child grows up in her womb as a part of her body. Her body is tissue, made of the same genetics with some additions, modifications, but the same material, the same blood is shared by the mother and the child. And when the child comes out as a separate being, you know the child as yourself and yet as another. And in that first gaze at the child, you have this profound movement of utter self-giving and love. And somehow it is the child who draws it out of you, and yet what he draws out you never knew you had, or at least you didn't know how to bring it out. Something extraordinary takes place in that first connection when you see the child objectively. And the same for the father who feels this relationship with the child. But there's something even more profound. In this child, in this being, is not merely a part of your body that is put out, but there is a new soul that has come in. Something new, something essential, something unique that belongs only to that child which was never yours. And the child revealing that and growing to fulfill that is the fulfillment of the child. Not in repeating what you have received and what your ancestry gave you and giving the best of that. There's something new the child brings. And so all the best you have to give is wonderful and it's excellent nourishment, but there's something you cannot give but which already the child brings. And we have to recognize that the child is born carrying this gift, this sense of purpose, this sense of deeper identity, but may not be conscious of it. From a spiritual experience, one can actually have this perception that the parents who conceive the child with an aspiration and consciously actually invoke a response, and a soul chooses and theirs. It chooses sufficiently developed and conscious, even infuses into the form, the growing body of the child, elements of its own psychological and spiritual content, which it has built up across lives. And all this is preparing even before birth. At the time of birth or in the emergence into life, there is of course the shock of the transition, and much of this, which is consciously brought by the soul as if recedes into the background, is even lost to the surface memory. And so as parents, if we are conscious of this truth, we begin to look at our child differently, and we will learn from our child as much as we will teach and share. Because the child has brought something which your ancestry couldn't give you. And so if you set up this right, true relationship of co-learners, even as you give your best to your child, you will also receive the best that your child is capable of giving you. But some of it may be still buried, covered up, because the child is not conscious, has as if forgotten the full import of what has been brought for this life's purpose. And so part of your responsibility will be assisting the child to awaken to her deeper potential, assisting the emergence of the soul's influence into the personality. And this is where the integrality comes into effect. It's not enough that you give the body nourishing food, give it good exercise and a healthy upbringing, that you provide an environment which is nurturing and caring and strengthening and giving resilience. All of these are important. But to assist the evocation of that which is unique in the child is the crux of our role as parents. The bulk of modern education, the bulk of modern society is only struggling or designed to beat down the children into uniformity. The whole educational system emerges from the industrial age, where the goal of education was to make you a factory worker. And so you see the content of the education is structured along a factory assembly line. You're made to wear a uniform because you want to uniformalize everybody, kill and suppress their individuality, and put them through a whole sequence of testing at every stage like an assembly line. And if you fail, then you're marked defective and thrown out of the system or made to be punished. And the whole content of the education, which is made so objectivized, mechanized, is designed to reduce your mind into machinery, killing creativity and individuality. One of the points I make often when I speak to these high performer students, when they come out with these extraordinary marks and very high performance numbers, I say everything that you've been trained for, that you have excelled at, is going to be entirely useless for you as you enter the real world today, because whatever I can train you with, I can train my artificial intelligence and it will perform better than you. Because while you can work on one task at a time, my AI can work on a billion things at the same time with the same training that I give to you. What will make you successful and fulfilled in your life is not going to be the training that was given to you. It's going to be the uniqueness that you bring that exceeds that training. It's going to be that aspect of the intuition and inspiration that you can manifest, which exceeds the logical structure and framework, which is entirely mechanical and replicable by my artificial intelligence computers. And so what is this uniqueness that makes you special and which the machine cannot replicate? That is your most precious value and gift. And as parents, we have to deliberately choose to concentrate on this. How will you do that? It goes into a much deeper discussion for which we won't have time. But I will highlight this so that you can begin to become conscious. Second now, around this center, which is the soul's central aspiration and the special gift that the soul brings into the personality, you have the vehicle through which those gifts will be manifested. And broadly, these vehicles we can describe in three terms: the mind, the life energies, prana, and the physical body. The physical body is, of course, the most tangible of these, and therefore most people just give that the greatest importance. We do not give enough importance to the development of the emotional being and the life energy. And the mind, we assume, is being dealt with by the education, when in fact education is damaging the mind. The mind is a very fragile, if we can use the word machine or vehicle. It is extremely fragile and it is beaten down by the educational system today. To truly nurture the mind, and I'll put this now in terms which are very blatantly biological, because that's the language which today is scientific and acceptable. Well, we have two parts of our brain, left brain and right brain. All of current modern education focuses on left brain training. Even the artistic education is largely left brain art. And the creative aspect, the comprehensive power, the penetrating insight, which are associated with the true character of the right brain, are completely ignored. For example, we could teach mathematics in a way that is entirely right-brained, where instead of doing mechanical number additions, which my computer and calculator can do faster than you, we would teach you to do complex, difficult, even large calculations purely on the basis of an intuitive sense which can be developed. And it would be far more interesting, far more practical. For example, you would go through your shopping mall, buy up a few things. By the time you come out of your grocery store, let's say, you would know approximately the total without having made a total at all. That's the power of the mind which belongs to the right brain and is still applicable to mathematics. Equally, in the arts, the whole creative content of the right brain is completely ignored. And what is called art is still largely left brain centric. But even if you train the left and right brain, there is the central part of the brain which links the two, which is never trained. So my point here is the mental education given by our system is defective, insufficient, and even harmful. If you really want to train the mind, well, you'll have to bring in other elements. And of course, there are many ways to do it depending on the age group of the child. Again, I will not be able to go into detail, but I'll touch upon a few examples. Your child at a very young age, in fact, has a complex power of expression, even complex sentences. If only he could speak, he cannot. And these are simple experiments which have been attempted. A baby who's barely 3 or 4 months old is capable of articulating complex structures of ideas, but unable to articulate in words, but only articulate through gestures or symbols. And what does that mean? It means you need to be able to already relate to your child on that level of maturity of a semi-adult, not think of him only as a baby. But also, Give the nourishment necessary for the development of the mind. And it could start with simple things like playing beautiful pieces of music. And by beautiful pieces, music that is harmonious. I would say you can start this while the child is in the womb, for example. When the brain is still being formed, the formation of the patterns of the brain cells and their growth is profoundly influenced by physical vibrations and harmonies that the music brings in. The child actually, while still in the womb, can recognize the voices of parents and others, and after birth turns to observe them. Why? Because he could hear the voices. He could recognize the patterns of intonation. And if you start training a child with exposure to different kinds of beautiful music, and I use the word beautiful with a highlight here, because much of the music that you hear on television and cinema is largely junk. You go to hotels, there's a background music, they call it muzak, which is utterly meaningless. It's almost mechanical, meaningless content of music. But look at some of the profound classical music, which lifts your whole being and opens within you as if doors and windows of experience, enriching, awakening powers within you that you didn't know existed. That's what I mean by beautiful and uplifting music. This provided to the child at a level where he cannot understand language yet or articulate language is already starting your education. We have this profound story in the Mahabharata where Abhimanyu is listening in the mother's womb while Shri Krishna teaches him the technical knowledge of entering the maze of the Chakravyuha. And when his mother falls asleep, the child loses connection and cannot register the rest of it. And this is a very profound truth. Your state as a parent reflects in the child. Well, I'm not going to elaborate for lack of time. Similar development of the emotions, which also we need to take up, and the body, which also I have to not go into detail for lack of time. But I'm going to move to other aspects. And now we come to this aspect of the link between the child and the parent. And there also in this link is the demand of an integrality. And I'm going to elaborate on this a little bit. As a mother, when you gave birth to your child, you had a physical link of the umbilical, which was cut. And at that point, the child became independent. Until then, the child was a part of you with the shared bloodstream and the shared everything else. Now, there is a lot of genetic research today, which shows it goes into the domain which is called epigenetics, where your thoughts, your emotions, the stresses which you carry within you are actually activating certain aspects of your genetics. And this is transmitted in the bloodstream to the child as specific knowledge, specific patterns of habits. And after the child is born, that content remains as an imprint for life. There are extraordinary experiments with epigenetics to show you that if parents, rats, for example, have been stressed heavily, even before they conceive, and then they're allowed to conceive and have children, and the children have children, the stress pattern goes through 2 generations, at least it's been detected. Ayurveda actually says what you develop within you as the best of you is transmitted down 7 generations. That's why we have this idea that, you thank all your ancestry going back 7 generations for the gifts that you have received, well, positive and negative. But this is a very important principle. You are transmitting something, but it does not stop with the umbilical alone. Well, just to highlight this point, how far it can go, there are interesting experiments where cockroaches have been taught to navigate a maze. And then it's a bit of a gruesome experiment, but it will highlight the point. Now, the cockroach which has been taught is taken out, a new cockroach put in who doesn't know the way in the maze. And then the blood of the old cockroach who knows the maze is transferred into the new cockroach, and the new cockroach knows how to navigate the maze. Now, in the biological transmission of blood is specific, precise mental knowledge of navigation and capacity which has been transmitted. Imagine what that means and what a profound implication it has. If you develop in your body a level of awareness, a skill of some kind, even a skill of cartwheels and somersaults of gymnastics, or of music, or a power of thought and conception and creativity, these are all transmitted to your children. But not just in the bloodstream. This is the interesting thing. Because after the umbilical is cut physically, there is the psychological umbilical that continues. And this continues the transmission of all that you are and all that you aspire to be. Your example is continuously pouring into the child as a nourishment for the child and shaping the child without your awareness. If you're a little more conscious, you are of course aware that something is happening. A mother, for example, feels when the child is in danger or is in distress. She knows, and sometimes with great precision. I am amazed to see some of these examples, and many of these I've seen in real life. For example, a very close family friend of ours, at the age of 90, was in her bed. Pretty much her mind was very calm and clear. She was not interested in most things. She had forgotten things about her own biological family. She was a very happy person. And then one day suddenly she said, I don't know what's happening to me. I feel as if I'm dying. And so we were concerned and we watched. The feeling passed within 24 hours, and we got the message that her daughter had passed away. How did she know that? Because the bond at the age of 90, after having not seen her daughter for decades perhaps, because, well, life has taken them in different directions, she felt that link still. Now, this is to highlight something very important. If a link is one way, it is also the other way. No link is one way. They're all two-way links. So everything that you live and feel as an adult parent, you may think you're feeling it in your office and you leave it behind when you come home. No, it's all pouring into your children. Of course, from the mother's side, it's much more vivid, but equally it exists from the father's side, because inherent to the child is an instinct that nature has put in all children. Because, nature has a profound investment in children. If a child is born in the forest and the parents are eaten by tiger, the child has to still survive. So she has put embedded in every child all the instincts needed to survive and to grow and to excel. Two of these instincts I will touch upon. The first of these instincts is that every child is spontaneously a hero worshipper. Every child is spontaneously, profoundly curious and experimenting. These are the two instincts, curiosity and hero worship. These two, if you can nurture, if you can guide, then you will have provided the child everything necessary to find their way into life. If you make the mistake of wanting to spoon feed instead of nurturing curiosity and allowing experimentation from the child, you would have damaged the child for life. So I'm not going to be able to elaborate on these, but I'm giving you these two first clues and instincts. You can think about the implications, but I will elaborate a little more on the second one, the hero worship side. Ask any child, what do you want to grow up to be like? Especially when they're very young, they will all say, like my parents. And if the parents, for some reason, are missing, they'll identify with one of the nearby family members or even family friends who becomes an equivalent of an ideal. Now, what happens when you have shared the sense of an ideal? When you look to somebody as an ideal, spontaneously your heart and mind opens and you want to replicate, to identify and draw into yourself the nourishment of what that ideal represents. The umbilical, which might not be biologically formed, is psychologically formed, even subsequent to birth, even if the physical parents are missing. Because the child chooses, looks up to an ideal, looks for an ideal to follow, and latches on and forms the umbilical to absorb from you what? And here comes the most profound key to transmission, to education, to teaching. It's not what you say that matters. You can speak all the politically correct words. The children will look at you and yes, learn it by heart to pass the exam, but they'll have absorbed nothing. They watch television for 5 minutes and come back with all the swear words without having been formally taught. What happened there? The key to true transmission of knowledge and learning is not what you speak, is what you are. And what the child chooses to identify with in what you are. And it's as if a clay, soft clay that touches the mold, receives an imprint and comes away with the perfect imprint of what you are, as an analogy. So you have to be the example. You have to be what you want the child to be. And of course you cannot. What do you do then? You narrate stories. And this is why in our tradition, we give so much importance to stories which present ideals, stories of excellence of every kind, and they are flawed characters. Let's take the example of the Mahabharata. Every character represents an epitome of a certain power, a certain capacity of human nature. But every character is equally flawed in some way. The very strength becomes the flaw in another way. And when the children listen to these stories, they spontaneously turn to the high ideals they represent and try to embody them. If they have not received those stories, they crave those ideals. They try to catch them. And what you receive instead is through cinema and television, which is unfortunately crude and often perverse. And the children feel the crudeness of it. They feel the perversion of it, but they're unable to distinguish because they think, oh, that's how the world is like. And they just absorb because, well, you have to learn. But if you give something higher, they spontaneously touch that which is higher. Very simple experiments, for example, when a newborn baby is given two toys, one is beautiful and one is ugly, he will spontaneously choose the beautiful. Showing that beauty is not just something which is part of our social programming. These are values which are eternal values and absolute essential truths, which the deepest part of us spontaneously wants to touch, to reach out and to absorb and make ours. And so the child, when he turns to you, absorbs the best that you are able to provide, which you may not be good enough, but you can give examples of the best through narration. And even there, you can still be good enough. I'll show you how you can do that as a parent. I may not be the perfect person, but the effort I make constantly to exceed my limitations, the effort I make to become a better person is my best example I can give. And I may fail and I continue to try. That's the best example the child will see. And he will see that, yes, certain things are difficult, but to continue to live for your highest ideals is the way to be. And that's the greatest gift you could have given. Again, I will have to unfortunately cut short because there's so many things to the integrality of this transmission of the parent-child relationship. There's so much to it. But I will touch upon one thing which is now essential and crucial because we have to end because of the time limits. One thing which is most essential is helping the child, preparing the child for life, which is full of all the contrary influences around. If you go back to maybe 20 or 30 years ago, before television became such a powerful influence, you had children who read storybooks, who listened to narrations, listened to stories from grandparents, who had time to play in the road because the roads were still safe to play in, or at least had a garden or some space where they could play, and had time to do nothing. And one of the most precious gifts you can give your child is the time to do nothing and to daydream. Unfortunately, in today's culture, you see a child daydream, you say, why are you wasting your time? Do your studies. The daydreaming is one of the most profound formative influences where the child introspects, dreams of possibilities, or simply curiously watches and thinks of implications. This is the power of thought and introspection, which is going to be his greatest power in the future. And we cut that short and say, mug up, mug up, mug up. The skill, the capacity to disengage from the world around and interiorize to explore the world within is the single most powerful requirement today, which is completely suppressed by the current education and the demand of life and urgency and lack of time. These have to be cultivated. You have to allow that space as well as the time. But I'm coming to that, which is most important here. In that introspection, to touch something and be aware of something within you, which is that with which you came when you took birth, or as close as that to that influence that you can get. Because when now you look out at the world and you see these contrary influences and you feel the impact of those influences, you will feel a dissonance between the crudity that you see on television, the coarseness that comes in public life today, against the sensitivity and refinement and beauty which is your soul. When you feel that dissonance, first of all, to be aware of the dissonance and then to make a choice, to choose that which is higher and truer within you. So first you need to be aware internally. Second, you need to be conscious of the dissonance. And third, you must have the strength to make that choice. And if you can cultivate this in your children, and there are many ways in which you can do this, in the way you interact, Instead of simply going and scolding them, why haven't you done this, do that, get them to become conscious. I could give many examples, but I think if you dwell on this, you will find your own ways. Assist the child to respect, value those things which are profoundly true within, and make that your reference also in relating to the child. So the nature of your relationship and the transmission that takes place from you to the child, in which you will give not only your inheritance and the best that you have received and what you are, but also assist in the emergence of the best that the child brings, from which you will also learn. That communication must also be integral, even as you help the child's integral flowering and development of personality, eventually even assisting the child to find his or her own path and purpose in life, which will be profound and not merely superficial, not merely getting a job, not merely becoming famous or making money, but fulfilling his deepest aspiration. There's a very interesting observation Sri Krishna makes in the Bhagavad Gita, when he says that it is better to fail in following your own purpose in life than to be successful in imitating somebody else's purpose. Why? I'm going to close with this observation. You see so many people today, and we are all aware of so-called successful people committing suicide for no reason that we can fathom. They're wealthy, they're rich, they have all the comforts, they're famous, they get adulations, film stars, all kinds commit suicide for no reason. Why? Because they feel their life hollow, purposeless, fake. Because they were chasing an ideal which was not theirs. And they may have appeared to succeed in that ideal, but they have failed internally and they have lost the sense of purpose of life. They've lost their own identity. And then who's left? Nobody. If on the other hand, you pursue that line of development, and I will use the word fulfillment, not success, fulfillment in your life, to fulfill yourself, your potential, your creativity, that special thing you bring in. When you fulfill that, you may not be successful in other people's eyes, but you will be so happy in what you do that you will not only do it well, but you'll have the joy that you can share with others. And you'll bring something, you will manifest something in life that nobody else could have manifested. That's what you were born for. And that's the growth for which you came on earth. So this is a very broad framework I'm offering, which I put in the framework in the title of Integral Parenting. And you can see it has two aspects: how you can conceive of the child and the child's development, and then how you relate and assist the child's development, all of which boils down to who you are and how you help your own development finally. Because if you don't grow, if you don't live to be more truly yourself, you cannot gift that to your child. Well, that's all I will say for now, and perhaps later when you have questions, we can expand on some of these aspects according to your interests. Namaste.
Thank you, Shraddhalu. Honestly, one could have gone on listening to you forever. How vital it is for us as adults, as parents, to undergo this kind of training and deep understanding before we even think of bringing a child into the world. And I think even the chat box has been reflecting this all along, that if we as adults, as teachers, as parents do not understand all of this, then we make mistakes, we mess things up. And no wonder then our children are so badly messed up. Again, the power of the power that the child brings into the world, the fact that the child is a soul and not to be treated as a blank slate, as mere matter on which we write our own scripts. This is so vital for all of us as parents and educators to understand. So thank you very much. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And we wish we would have time for more. And with that, I'd like to introduce the change facilitators who have been working with Shraddhalu for quite some time. They are also deeply connected to the Aurobindo system of teaching, to the ashram, all of Aurobindo and Mother's ideas. The program, the project that they are going to offer is called Conscious Parenting. And now I will introduce each of them in turn. We begin with Ira Jasubai. Ira has studied journalism, is a professional photographer, a painter who specializes in a beautiful technique of painting with beeswax and resin called encaustic art. She's also a full-time mom to teenage daughters. Welcome, Ira. The next change facilitator is Reena Mehta. And Reena has been associated with the Sri Aurobindo Society and Mother's Philosophy on Education and Parenting for the last several years. She's a psychotherapist by profession, a mother of two wonderful girls, and has served on the board of the Bombay International School. Welcome, Reena. Our third speaker is Anita Sanjana. Anita is particularly very, very dear to me. I add a personal note here. Anita has been teaching yoga as an ICSE board optional subject for the past 18 years. In 1994, the University of Chicago awarded her the Outstanding Educator Award. She's also the youth coordinator for the Sri Aurobindo Society branch in Mumbai. Welcome, Anita. And finally, we have Priyasha Muraka and Avinash Modi. Priyasha is a visual communication designer who's passionate about everything to do with design, but she feels it requires a great deal of empathy, understanding, and self-awareness. She is also a practitioner of yoga and meditation. Avinash Modi has been associated with the Sri Aurobindo Society for several years now and has been deeply influenced by Sri Aurobindo's and Mother's views on education and life. Earlier, he has been an educational counselor and teacher and has been able to help over 1,000 students in their educational journey. Over to you, change facilitators. Thank you. You could unmute yourself and start. Ira, you could unmute yourself and start. Anita, could we move to the second speaker since she doesn't seem to, she perhaps is temporarily disconnected?
I unmute the host or said. So now it's okay. Can anyone hear me?
Ira, yes. Ira, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Hello.
Yasti, can you guide her? Can you guide Ira, please?
She got disconnected. I think we'll have to go to the next person.
All right, and once she comes back, we'll have her. So could we move on to Reena, please? Reena?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, clearly, thank you.
Super. So I will talk a little bit about what the work I would like to do. I've titled my workshop, Parenting Beyond the Ordinary Life. I actually heard Shradhalu first when my older one was 4, she's now 25. So there's a lot of imbibing for many years. So coming from there, the focus of what I'd like to do is really work on that individual independent spark that Shradhalu talked about, something that is deeply individual and special to each child. It already exists, and at some level, they all have a knowledge of it, but it's often lost in all the noise through the messages that we give, honestly. The best we can do as parents is simply to provide the environment in which they can be in touch with that part of themselves, through encouragement and through unconditional love and providing that space. For that, we have to learn to allow them to discover their own path, to be in deep connection with themselves and with that intangible wonder that is in the material world around them. This starts with total self-awareness. And as the first step, it is the parent who must first understand their individual self. What motivates us? What makes us feel alive? What brings that true joy? And when we see these in our child, how do we connect that to understanding what is the individuality of this child? In my workshop, I'd like to look at how parents can create that environment that is in total harmony and conducive to the child being in tune with themselves and spontaneously exploring their higher joy. The subtle but deep changes that can be seen when we are in the presence of nature, of art, of yoga, of the stories that we just spoke about, of courage, of mastery, music, dance. Through this, we can see and feel the intangible energy in the material world around us and how they affect us and the children. And how once the children have discovered it, they will be able to tap into abilities and thoughts that we did not know possible. And it is in this state of connectedness and awareness that we can help our children make more conscious choices about things like success, money, and aspirations, where they can make it from their own space and not what they hear from the outside. Also, one important part of this workshop I'd like to do is to bring in young people, teenagers, who are at a level to where they can interact and explain to us their perspectives on important subjects like academics and life goals. So that's what I'd like to do.
Thank you, Reena. Now have Anita, please.
Now is the speaker working? Okay.
Ira, are you on? Okay, let's try.
Okay, hopefully it works now. I'm here.
Ira, we cannot get you again. Could you try again? While Ira is trying, I would like to put in a word to the audience that we encourage schools to sign up to receive knowledge of integral education and integral parenting. If you could put this word across to your PTAs, and your teachers and the parents could come together to avail of the training, that would be brilliant. You could be called an experimental school and partner with Shradhalu and his team on this very, very precious knowledge. Ira, can we try again just once? If not, we'll move on to Anita. I don't think Ira is on. We'll try again later. Anita, could you come on, please? Anita?
Ira is someone but her audio is not just not on. She has to connect her audio. Ira is there.
Yasji, can we unmute Anita?
She's
That's me.
unmuted.
Now I'm unmuted.
Perfect. Great.
Okay. So I'd like to share a recent interaction I had with a young girl. She was in her early 20s. It was during the period of this lockdown, during the COVID. And she told me that, miss, I am so scared because the only thing I have to depend on in this time is my immunity. And I thought, wow, what a thought. And I felt so grateful that I have my immunity to fall back on to fight COVID. But when I looked into this child's eyes, I saw so much fear. And I felt sad that as educators, we'd failed our children. Of course, this child hadn't studied with me. She'd studied abroad. But I thought that to trust your own immune system to provide you protection, if that fills you with so much fear, how resilient are we really making our children? How resilient is education really making the children? So the workshops I offer are to build resilience in the children. And resilience, not that comes from just positive thinking or a change in belief system. Resilience that comes from connecting the child to a source deep inside her, which stands the test of time. So over the years, I've had the good fortune of working with many, many youth, taking them to Pondicherry on yoga camps, working with Shraddhalu. I've worked with children who've been into drugs, whose parents have attempted suicide. I've worked with a variety of children, so broken sometimes, but yet so unbreakable. Given the right environment and right exposure, how beautifully you see that there's an element in each child, each one of us, which is so much bigger than the environment. And our job as educators is simply to put them in touch with that. So we'll be doing that in our workshops through possible yoga camps, Pondicherry for parents and children, through sessions where we'll give simple techniques of breath awareness, meditation, perhaps a little yoga, exploring the works of masters, which brings you in touch with your own truth. And just to give you a sample of how unbreakable our youth can be, this is a poem composed by a student of mine, Sanaya Patel, at 16. She writes, "We were born into a world of conditioning, a world of boxes. These boxes make us see skin as soul. These boxes try to push something very powerful into a very weak mold. These boxes take us far away from ourselves, and yoga takes me home. Yoga is my anchor, my reminder that life is easier when I simplify. I am not defined by the standards set by society. I am not the poisons that my own mind tries to feed me. I hold sunshine inside me, untouched by the outside, untouched by labels and stereotypes and definitions. I am without the noise of the world. I am without my own thoughts. I am in silence. I Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anita. That was absolutely delightful. And let's try Ira again. Ira, if you
Kumi,
can unmute
Kumi,
yourself.
Kumi, can I be heard?
Yes,
Hello?
a bit of an echo, yes.
Okay, so, I think there seems to be something wrong here with my internet connectivity. If you're okay, I will go without the video.
I think that's perfect because without the video, we can hear you clearly, Ira. Please carry on.
Okay, so hello, everyone. I'm Ira. And as this session suggests, that we've definitely come a long way from wanting to mold the children into what we want them to be, to actually knowing more about them and what is it that they can do. And as Shraddhalu rightly said, the children already have it in them. They just need facilitators to bring it out. And that's the role we as parents can play very well. So for that, first we need to establish a deeper connect with our child. And because on that connect depends not only our relationship with them, but their own relationship with themselves. I'm a parent to two girls who are now teenagers. And I'm happy to say that at least I have been able to establish that connect. And I did that when they were really, really small. And I think this has come, it stayed and just deepened over the years. So the things which I also want to work in my workshop and the areas which I used in making that connect are very simple, but perhaps not, I just wanted to share, so perhaps somebody else can also benefit from them. One was the bedtime ritual. Did you know that children, they're most receptive and open just before they go to sleep? So very small, soothing conversations about, what is happening in the day, helping them see the bright side of things. It really helps in a good and peaceful sleep. And also, the state of mind or the state of consciousness in which a child sleeps, it determines the quality of sleep. And that goes a long way in both physical and mental being of a child. And so that we can play a big role in. We can take them to that consciousness, that state of awareness when they go to sleep. So this was one. We used to look forward to just spending time, both me and my husband, just spending time with our kids when they are about to sleep. And it would be anything from half an hour to 45 minutes. And if you're short on time, then maybe just 20 minutes. Second thing is storytelling. Now, storytelling is not just an elaborate thing which you do. It could be something very small. It is just something which sparks their active imagination. And children are always, they're like sponges. They want to explore more worlds. They want to look at different things. They want to, there's always a wonder in their eyes. And talking to them also brings that wonder in your eyes, and your mind is, again, fertile and active. So it was a great journey doing storytelling, cooking up a story with them, or telling them a story, or asking them to tell a story. So it was the feel and the wonder. It was time travel, and literally got us on the same page. Also, storytelling is a life skill. Who isn't interested in a good story, right? The third thing which I wanted to emphasize on was the importance of free play. Now, it sounds very, 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 matter of fact, free play. But one of the things I observed, even in myself in the very beginning, was that, when my child is playing, I would come and say, "Oh, hi, what is it that you're making? What is it that you're doing?" Not realizing that I am interrupting a process. So one of the best memories I have is making my own clay things when my kids were trying to make theirs, resisting that urge to teach them, but just being with them, letting them enjoy an activity without any interference. That's liberating for the child and boosts their confidence, and also engages their attention a little bit longer. So when we connect with our child deep enough in their early childhood, we retain that thread of communication, even in the years later. Also, we must remember that we are passing a bit of our consciousness to them all the time. So as parents, all the techniques which help raise our consciousness, like music, meditation, poetry, art, that also helps our children indirectly. Most of the times we think it's conversations that we have with them, which tell us what the child has to say. But more often than not, it's not that we hear, but what we don't, but possibly can feel. Thank you.
That was lovely, Ira. Thank you so much. Yes, storytelling is a life skill, and also the importance of free play. Thank you very much. And now could we have Priyasha and Avinash?
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
It's
Hello.
so nice to be here. I've known Shraddhalu for, I think, more than half my life. We met for the first time when I was 13. And Avinash has also been interacting with both Shraddhalu and Miss Sanjana for like years and years. And it's really, really cool that we actually get to be a part of this and give you guys a different perspective. We're not parents, not yet at least. And what we would like to offer and bring to the table is the other side, the other perspective coming from the youth and coming from the side of like everyone here, we really appreciate, obviously wants to be better parents and wants to do better for their kids. So already half the battle is won. And what we would like to add and talk about is the like even though you guys all have the best intentions, there are some common mistakes and things that kind of go wrong, even though you want to do the best for your kids. So we will be dwelling on that with the sessions, kind of going into introspection, going into understanding a bit about yourself, and in that way understanding how to deal with your kids, whether they are young children or teenagers or in their 20s like us. Everyone has a different perspective and a different thing to offer. So we're going to look at it and help you maybe bridge the communication gap or the generation gap, whichever that you all have to do. And the only thing we hope that you bring is your consciousness and openness. The way that's the best thing that you can get for our sessions, and hopefully we can help you be better parents and communicate and have better relationships with your kids.
There's nothing I'd like to add to that. You kind of summed it up perfectly.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And I'm once again repeating that it needn't be that only individuals sign up for integral parenting. It could be schools which sign up for integral parenting, and we'll do the best we can. Over to you, Meher.
First of all, thank you, Shradhalu, for the fabulous presentation. Thank you for the gift of that inspiration. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. The first question is, through integral parenting, how can we use education to build a connection with our future generation? I would like to share my perspective as an educator first, and then we can have a discussion. I think that comes by understanding what role does discipline, punishment, and consequences play in education. Now, many parents and educators think that punishment helps to build discipline, but in raising kids, we need to focus more on discipline rather than punishment. Punishment is when we try to control our kids. Discipline is when kids learn to control themselves. And it is also important to enable our kids to see consequences as a source of enlightenment and not as a force of punishment. Only then the kids will be willing to make mistakes and learn from their mistakes. Ladies and gentlemen, please have your attention on the screen. Let me share my favorite tool that I use to make a connection in education. This is the child, this is the system. This is the consequence of punishment, constant stress. This is the consequence of discipline, complete freedom. Punishment deforms, discipline transforms. Let us inform to transform, not deform our kids, because in that information lies the connection with our future generation. Shradhalu and team, would you like to share your valuable insights on this question, please?
I think the question is very general, so I will give a general answer, a response. Every parent is, as we have already seen, the first teacher, and every teacher is a parent. And increasingly, these distinctions are getting blurred because in practice, children spend more time with their teachers in school than with their parents at home. That's the nature of our life. It's not very healthy, but that's how it is. In practice, teachers don't have time to be parents because they're too busy chasing the books and the curriculum, which is mostly useless, has no real value for life or for the child's evolution. And the parents don't have enough time to be the parents also, because the children are so stressed, they need to de-stress, and they will either turn to television or some other, just to be free from all the compulsion that is imposed on them through the whole day. And so really there's no one left as the parent, truly, unfortunately. And so this approach to parenting, when we become conscious of it, we can bring in that aspect of the true parenting and nurturing of the child, both in school as teachers formally, as well as at home as parents. When you don't have enough time with your child, you can still transmit in a shorter time something which is of deeper value, which the child will then seek for and yearn for, even look forward to.
Thank you. Thank you. You mentioned about developing a purpose for a child. And so, in my opinion, what is the purpose of education? And let me give you my humble understanding on the purpose of education. To me, the purpose of education is to provide an education of purpose. So what does that mean? It means that we need to encourage our kids to become a seeker and a believer, not just a leader or a follower. So how do we do that? By encouraging them to focus on building a career instead of just finding a job. It's because a job makes something for you, a career makes something of you. Once you make something of you, everything for you will come to you seamlessly. Jimmy Rowan said, the greatest value in life is not what we get. The greatest value in life is what we become. Because it's not what we get that makes us valuable. It's what we become that makes us valuable. Let us help our kids to become the stars they were born to be. That, I believe, is the true purpose of education. Shradhalu and team, would you like to share your insights on this question on education?
Yes, what a child grows to be, to fulfill his deeper aspiration, is certainly the single most important thing. But I would still avoid the use of the word career, simply because the word career itself is associated with a very narrow rat track. You've been programmed to run the rat race, and career is one of the tracks which has been slotted for you. And so rather than seeking even a career, I would use the word seek your deepest fulfillment. That will become your life purpose, and incidentally the career which will also sustain you economically or otherwise. In practice, what happens, you will see most people who are slotted into careers and generally pushed by parents or society into high-paying careers because that's more highly valued. So they're chasing something which they hate to do through most of their life. They suffer and tremendous oppression and burn themselves out to be able to earn enough money that they can save so that after retirement, they can do the things that they would love to do. And to me, that's kind of a meaningless pursuit, because by the time you reach that point, you're so burnt out that you don't have the energy to do something worthwhile in any case. And I would suggest you start the other way. Start by doing the things which give you the deepest fulfillment. And in the joy of that fulfillment, you will naturally grow and find the means by which it will sustain itself. I'm going to put it another way. And I'll use a vocabulary which is more popular today in terms of the universe, but you could speak of the divine help instead. When you do something that is worthwhile, everything around you in life comes to help you for that because it's worthwhile. When you do something that is worth less, however much it may be for you important because you've been told it's important, there's nothing out there that needs to help you because you're just repeating what others have been doing. So when you start fulfilling your deepest purpose, you're doing something which nobody else in the whole universe can do, and the entire universe is there to assist you because that's what you are here for. And so chase your deepest aspiration, and it may not necessarily take a form that your mind can fix. You know, people always say, what will you become when you grow up? And you have a slotted word. And I would say, forget all those words. Start doing the things which give you fulfillment, and it will grow to take on forms which you cannot define because they bridge gaps between these slotted words. And that will be your fulfillment in life.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We talked about the purpose of education. Now let's talk a little bit about the purpose of life. Earlier, I said the purpose of life is to live a life of purpose. Now I want to clarify that. purpose is not what you do, but purpose is what you are. Many moons ago in England, there was an architect who was building a cathedral. One day, he decided to visit the construction site where he saw 3 workers doing exactly the same job. He asked the first person, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I am breaking rocks." He asked the second person, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I am making walls." And he asked the third person, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I am building a cathedral." Likewise in life, what is our purpose? Is it to break stones, make walls, or build a cathedral? The choice is entirely ours. We can choose to live our life in peace, or we can choose to live our life in pieces. Let us choose wisely so that we can become the architect of our own lives, and that way around, children become samples of our examples. Shradhalu, would you like to share a complementing perspective on this philosophy?
So this is very important. The example you gave is so beautiful. I'll expand upon that using that as the launch pad. If you are conscious that you're building a cathedral or a temple or a place that is for you sacred, putting the bricks together is one of the works you could do. Setting the beams would be another work. Carving the icons, painting the walls, creating the metal works, laying the foundations. Each of these is a different kind of specialization. And if you feel you're building this sacred space, to the extent you are able to, you should flow into all these different aspects of the sacred space. And even you should be able to play the music that you will play in the sacred space to create the atmosphere, isn't it? So ideally what I would want, and as parents, this is what we should aim at with our children, allow your children to flower out in all their possible petals. Do not slot them into a single petal, and start early. From childhood, explore, let them explore, encourage them to explore every possible activity that they could imagine, or they show interest in, or that you can imagine which no one shows interest in also. So when I was 5 years old, every time we had holidays, my mother said, you find something you want to do, work in a different section. So in the ashram community, we had various departments. It's like a complex village life. And every holiday, I would work in a different department. So I started, I think when I was 5 or 6, working in the cycle repair store. And later I was in the fridge repair, so electronics store and department, and then the watch repair department. And then I was sitting in the library for hours on end, exploring every possible thing. The point was, in all these different so-called skills, you play a musical instrument, you sing, you dance. In all these different skills, different aspects, petals of your personality are unfolding, and you do not do them to pass exams. You do not do them to excel, to become a performer or a dance monkey who will get an award at the end of it. You do them because it gives you joy. And so as parents, I will ask you, encourage your children and say, do it for fun for a month. If you don't like it, just enjoy it for a month, switch to some different activity every month, no problem. But explore every possible activity. And as you grow up, you will have such a rich, wide base in your personality that you'll find you can just flow to do whatever you like, because you will be integrated as a person. Subsequently, let's say you pass through high school, college, university, whatever it is, do not slot yourself into a career path either. I go so far as to tell children, especially that you see there are children who have very narrow personality types, and there are those who are much more broad and rich. I will say till the age of 25, do not specialize. Explore every kind of activity that interests you. Build a broad base, and then spontaneously your life will begin to specialize. Those who even at 25 are exploring, I'll say don't specialize till you're 30. Of course, if you can afford it. If you can't, then you find your balance. But even when you're slotted into a job, spend time to do those other things, because that's how you will enrich yourself. So when you pursue this full enriching unfolding of your personality, that's how you'll build the wide base on which you can build that cathedral, temple, sacred space, which is finally your life. Your life is your cathedral, your life is your temple, and within your heart is the deity that you will install. And everything you do will be an expression of its beauty and an expression of its love and wisdom.
Wow, Shraddhalu, that was amazing. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so
Beautiful.
much. But with this,
Beautiful.
we'll have to move on to our next speaker of the day, Father Godfrey Disa. Meher, kindly formally introduce Father to the audience. Thank you.
Shraddhalu, thank you very much for your kindness and graciousness.
Thank you, Meher.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my distinctive honor to introduce our special guest speaker. His topic today is handling depression in a post-COVID situation. For the past 47 years, Father Godfrey Disa has been a member of the International Don Bosco organization that caters to youth facing marginalized and difficult situations. He completed his training in psychology at the Fordham University in New York and a 2-year postgraduate diploma in counseling at the Postgraduate Center for Mental Health in New York. He has done his training in somatic experience in London and is also an integral somatic psychology practitioner. Father Godfrey is the founder director of Prafulta, a multi-dimensional center for psychological wellness in India for the past 23 years. Prafulta has grown from a team of 5 professionals to over 30 to date, offering counseling, psychiatry, testing, career guidance, psychoeducational assessment, special education, occupational therapy, and a variety of multitude of services. Prafulta also offers a wide range of training programs and workshops throughout the year. It has a number of support groups reaching out to people in need. As a principal and a school leader, Father Godfrey introduced many innovative teaching methods. He used extra care of the weaker students to introduce full-time counseling services with proper assessment of children and engaged a team of specialists to provide occupational therapy and remedial education to children facing learning difficulties. He also introduced a bridge course to enhance their language and math skills. Father Godfrey is a life member of the Bombay Psychiatric Society. He has served as the president of the Salesian Psychological Association, as well as the Conference of Catholic Psychologists of India. All of these bodies are committed to promote mental health. He lectures widely on areas of mental health, emotional well-being, and psychosexual spiritual integration. He is passionate about reaching out to children in need and in helping them to live a happy, fulfilled, and meaningful lives. And with that immense pride, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming by giving a warm humanitarian welcome to this passionate leader and compassionate path breaker who truly enjoys bringing people together to work in teams for the enhancement of society, Father Godfrey Disa.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, for your introduction. You could have really made it extremely brief. It was not really necessary to say all of that. Thank you. Shraddhalu, I had the good fortune of listening to some bit of your talk. I had a study group before, and I really enjoyed what you spoke on integral parenting. So much of what you said that made so much deep sense. And I do hope that we have had a lot of time to reflect over what we've been doing, because this pandemic gave us that time to reflect. I just hope that we do things differently, do things more meaningfully when we get back into our life again after this pandemic. I'm grateful to Dr. Kumi and her team for putting GTPS together, for having reached out to thousands. And now through your change facilitators, you're going to take this further ahead. It is sincerely a wonderful venture. As a Don Bosco priest and a psychologist, it has been my life work to reach out to children in distress. And therefore, I'm grateful for this little opportunity to be a guest speaker at this wonderful summit that has been organized by you and your team. Without further ado, I'm going to share a PowerPoint program and use that to speak. I'll try and be as brief as possible because of the shortage of time that we have. As you can see, my topic is the pandemic effect, anxiety and depression in children. My focus would be on children because I'm told that the audience are parents and teachers, educators chiefly. So we'll focus on children as much as we can in this short talk. Childhood is a happy place to be. Children must be happy.
You need to share your screen, Father.
I'm sorry, I thought I'd shared the screen. I'm sorry. I'll go back. I'm sorry. I thought my screen is on the already on the. I'll get back 1 sec. Yeah. Thank you for telling me that. I'll go to share screen and then do that. Is that on?
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, I'm getting to the PowerPoint mode. I'm not able to show it on the slide mode. Okay, it's come there. Yeah, I was saying the childhood is a happy place to be. Children must be happy, they should be carefree, they must be having an enjoyable time. And children, when you look at them, mostly they are content and they feel free. And that's why we love to be with children, we love to watch children. I like this quote, not the one that is there on your screen, but a quote that says, "The business of childhood is play." Adults spend a major part of their day at work. Children must spend a major part of their day at either real or imaginative play. Play also that involves a lot of movement of arms, legs, and body, because the more the movement, the greater the overall development. But instead, we have turned study into the business of a child. Have you finished your homework? How many marks did you get? You have not been studying. You must do better at school. You must work harder. This is what they hear almost all the time. And before you realize, their childhood is over. Childhood should evoke nostalgic memories. Picnics and outings, overnight stays at friends' place, having your own gang, fun activities, time for running, jumping, laughing. That should be what you remember when you think of your childhood. But not all children are happy. Some feel sad. Some are not able to run and play the way others do. Some children are frightened and afraid. And the worst part is they have no clue why they feel this way. Something has gone wrong inside. And now we come to the pandemic and what effect it has had on children, on us too. Something very unprecedented, something that has changed our lives in unimaginable ways. It has forced physical isolation. It has disrupted social interactions. For adults, it has been a lot of job loss. Our economy has been destroyed. For children, it has been a complete change of their lifestyle. Schools have been closed. They've been confined to home. They cannot go out and play. They have to wear a mask. They have to keep social distance. They've got to wash their hands constantly. I'm saying this goes on and on and on, and they're wondering what this is all about. You know, I feel as a mental health professional, what we have been worried very much is keeping our child physically safe. We need to do that. We must do that, and it's important. But there is no health without mental health. how much attention have we paid to the emotional imbalance this pandemic has had on our children? First of all, very basically, to describe what is mental health, what is emotional well-being, you can describe that in various ways. To put it very simply, is to have a balanced mind, a sense of confidence and self-esteem, an ability to be able to take the ups and downs of life without losing control, without adopting unhealthy coping behaviors. Mental illness significantly affects how a child thinks, perceives, and acts. According to the World Health Organization, it's said that 1 in 4 suffer from mental health symptoms. That's a huge number. 50% of the mental health conditions begin with children around the age of 13 when they enter their teens and develop fully around the age of 24. It's caused by a number of factors: long-term stress, constant negative thinking, maybe personality disorders, maybe experiencing some trauma, maybe undergoing physical, emotional, or sexual abuse. A lot of these factors contribute towards mental illness. And almost all of these is not the child's fault. Now, with the pandemic, without warning, online learning has been imposed. Children got only the bad part of school, namely classes. The fun part, the breaks, the canteen, the friends, the sports, all those other things of school is not there. And so most children, although they enjoyed the first part of the lockdown, I'm saying are absolutely bored. They're now lonely, angry, demotivated with all that is happening. I know all of us are aware of this. Screen time has more than doubled. Because of the unsupervised internet access, children are on their mobiles or iPads or laptops or whatever they have. I know kids who are there almost 12 to 14 hours a day. This has created increased solitude and isolation. This has absolutely disrupted their daily routine. It has increased gaming. It has also increased the use of pornography. Now, that is for those who have had gadgets that they can use. There were many others that were affected in ways that were different. They didn't have the gadgets required for their online learning. There was no proper connectivity or poor bandwidth. Mayor, am I being heard?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, because I suddenly found that I was not being heard. I know kids who have been hesitant to show their screens during online class, although it was made compulsory by the school, because they were feeling ashamed of their homes. Some other children, when the spotlight came on them, they got very anxious. Many, without the help of adults to help them with this online classes, were totally lost. So I want to ask this question. With all this that is happening, I'm saying we feel good that our children are going for online classes, etc. How much education, how much learning is really happening, and what is the effect of what we are doing on children? Are we adding greater stress? Are we disrupting their lives all the more with what we think we are doing by the education that we are giving them in this period? Now it has gone on for more than 10 months. I want us, I'm saying we know that children feel, but I want us to understand how they feel and what happens to them. There are lots of children that grow with fears and worries. They feel sad and hopeless. They don't have confidence in themselves. But usually, with a little support, they outgrow their fears and anxieties. But if they do not, then in many ways it interferes with their school, with their home, with their play, and this goes on to develop far more serious problems in their growth and development. And the most common mental health problem in children is anxiety and depression. It is said that almost 14% of children today are suffering from anxiety and depression. And with this pandemic, the numbers have increased tremendously. Let us quickly understand what I mean by anxiety in children. There are various kinds of anxiety. The most basic, especially when they are very small, is separation anxiety, being separated from their parents or their significant others. Then there are children that develop a lot of fears called phobias. They have fears of insects, fear of darkness. I had a child that was absolutely paranoid about going for a haircut. But there are these different kinds of fears that children also develop. There's another thing called social anxiety, where they feel very uneasy in the presence of others. And some children could also have what is called general anxiety. They feel that bad things will happen to them. They will never be able to go ahead. They are not fortunate or lucky. Some of these things children can just grow up with. And anxiety can develop into what we call panic attacks, where there is rapid heartbeat, difficulty in breathing, there is feeling dizzy, sweaty palms. All of this makes it extremely difficult for a child to think of anything else when the child is full of anxiety and worries. Here are some physical symptoms that a child experiences when the child is anxious. Blurred vision, flushed cheeks, dry mouth, shaky hands, tummy nauseous, sweaty palms, echoing sound, stiff legs, sweaty feet are some of the things. But these are physical symptoms, but the child also feels a sense of apprehension, of feeling on edge, sense of confusion, helplessness, negative thoughts, feels irritable, angry, fatigued, frequent headaches, stomach aches, body pains. All of these things are part of what the child feels physically and emotionally, but doesn't know what to do about them. We'll come to some things that we can do with children who have anxiety. Let's go now to depression in children. The sad thing is that today more and more younger children experience depression. I've been practicing for the last 30 years. For us, I'm saying depression, we met with people who are young adults. When they were in their 20s, I'm saying I worked with people who are depressed. I'm working with children now who are 10, 12 years old who experience depression. Depression is different from feeling low now and then. Depression is a feeling, a low feeling that goes on for days and weeks, and you can't shake it off. It's a persistent sadness. You feel low in energy. There's loss of interest in any activities, even activities that were fun before. There's a disruption in sleep and appetite. You get easily irritated, agitated. There's a deep sense of feeling worthless. You just cannot do anything that is worthwhile. In children, we must pay attention to some of these red flags or signs that can help us to find that this child might be depressed. There could be a sudden drop in performance. The child is excessively worried. Or probably I'm saying the child just does not show interest in anything. nothing excites the child. There's increasing fear. Maybe the child refuses to go to bed, or when the school was going on, I'm saying refused to go to school. Frequent nightmares. The child becomes quiet and withdrawn, cuts off from friends, disconnected, lack of interest in games, lack of interest in fun activities. Nothing seems to be giving any more fun. Low energy, I said this before, could be frequent crying, constant tantrums. We need to pay attention to these things because these are signs that something is not okay with the child. And if this continues for a period of 2 weeks or more, we need to make sure that we find help for the child. And why does this happen? There are various factors. No, I'm talking scientifically. I'm saying what are the things that we know that causes some of these things. It could be genetic. If there is somebody in the family who has had experience of depression, who's gone through depressive episodes, it could affect the child. I'm saying he or she could also get into depression more easily. It could be because of personality disorders. It could be also because neurotransmitter abnormalities. Something is not functioning okay in the brain. There could be certain coping styles that are not okay, or there could be certain learned patterns of thoughts and behaviors that are not healthy. When these are repeated and become a pattern, a habit, could lead to depression. We come to adolescence, and when I'm talking about adolescence, I'm talking chiefly of children who have reached their teens and then move on further, probably from 13 to 19, 13 to 21. To me, this is a very, very crucial time in the growth of a child. Childhood too is extremely important, the stages before, but this stage is very important from our point of view of mental health. Most mental illness begins during this time, during adolescence. And some of the warning signs are developmental intellectual difficulties. The child is just finding it very difficult to cope with his or her studies. There is conduct disorder. No, the child is finding discipline extremely difficult, rebels, is not ready to be disciplined in any way possible. There's a presence of autism spectrum disorder. These are all difficulties that the child could experience, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, or there could be learning difficulties. Some of these things, if not found out and the child is not helped, could lead the child to depression. There could be dramatic mood swings, tremendous change in eating or sleeping patterns, not bothered about personal hygiene are some of the warning signs in adolescence that we need to pay attention to see something is not okay with this child. Another important thing to remember here is that girls are more likely to get into depression than boys. Studies have shown us that 15.9% of girls have depression, whereas 7.7% boys are depressed. So there's a huge difference between girls and boys. It could be because of the brain formation, it could be because of hormones, but this is the actual situation. And depression comes upon you slowly. It really creeps upon you. You almost don't realize. No? Very gradually you get used to withdrawing, being isolated, cutting off from others, not getting into activities, feeling low, feeling down. And somehow or the other you feel this is the way things are. You just think this is your normal. And depression is different for different people, for everyone. I've mentioned before, I'm saying it's between boys and girls, but also between two boys and between two girls, it's very different. What makes one depressed and what makes the other depressed could be completely different. It is not even the same for people within the same family. For me, what I want to impress here is the why and how is not as important as trying to find a way out. Here is a child that requires help. And rather than trying to find why it's happened, let's try and find out and saying what can be done to help this child move further in life. Because the longer the child is in this anxiety and depression, the more difficult, the greater the struggle it is for the child to move ahead. We're talking about getting help now. Especially, I'm talking about in the emotional area, a child has very little resources. The child has not developed the ability to manage emotional difficulties on his or her own, and therefore the child requires support. Also, I'd like to make this point here, which is very important. It's not only the parents who should feel responsible saying, I've got to make sure I do something for my child. Yes, the parents need to sort of take the initiative, but the parents most time might not be sufficient to be able to reach out and help the child. We require to create and develop a team to help a child who has got anxiety disorder or who is in depression. We need to make use of parents, teachers, family, society, professionals, get the help of everyone possible in some way to see what can be done for the child. That African saying is very true. You need a village to raise a child, especially for a child who needs help in this area of mental health. Closing the treatment gap. I want to say that 90 to 95% of children, and this is from the experience that I've had working with children for a number of years who've got anxiety and depression, 90 to 95% of the children can be helped. And the symptoms that they have can reduce drastically. The sad part is 85% of these children do not get the help they want. They do not get treatment at all. And why this? Often is the ignorance of adults to not pick up the signs that they are seeing, or probably they do not know where to go for help. It could be because they have no resources. You need often some finance to be able to get the help that is required. And then really for a population like ours, there is a lack of professionals that are required. If what the WHO says that 1 in 4 has symptoms of mental illness, then I'm saying the number of professionals that we require is huge. What the government needs to do is create more opportunities to have professionals that can reach out and help. But for me, the big one, the big reason why children do not get help is the stigma that we attach to mental illness. And that is really sad. For most of us, what will others say is uppermost in our mind. Why do we give so much importance to what will others say when our child is suffering so badly? When our child, not literally, but with the way the child is going about, is really crying for help. Let us remember that there is no health without mental health. If untreated, there could be very drastic consequences, and this child will keep struggling, which is not going to be very easy. I know children who have attempted suicide because they have not got the help that they want, and they feel it's hopeless. They just can't move on. The most effective treatment is a combination of both counseling and medication. And I want to say this because, first of all, let's know that either one is only half as effective. But when you give both, it's most effective, and it has helped plenty of children when they get both a little bit of medication, which is given very, very carefully, and a lot of counseling help, psychological help. But I want to say this, many parents are reluctant to have the child medicated, and rightly so, because the belief is that there are lots of after effects. You're right, there are. No? But today's medications are far different from what it was years ago. Today's medications are more effective and the side effects are much less. And sometimes when a child requires it, we must be ready to give. Of course, we need to find doctors that are going to be extremely careful to medicate a child. Let me conclude. I want to go through just quickly 5 ways, simple ways to help children. The first one is self-regulation. As adults, we need to learn that we first must learn to manage our own emotions. And I say this very often, no emotion is bad. There's no good or bad. There are emotions that are easy, there are emotions that are difficult. No? And we need to sort of learn to tolerate these emotions. We need to increase our capacity to hold these emotions. And that is important. So running away from emotions is not going to help. Staying with the emotion, increasing the capacity to deal with the emotion is what matters. Stay calm, use feeling words to express what you feel, and teach children this language of expressing emotions, using words that can help to bring out what they feel. When they are able to say what they feel, to verbalize what they feel, a lot of the tension that they feel inside can come off. 2, I'm rushing through because I don't want to go far beyond. We'll just finish quickly. Second is follow routine. The pandemic has thrown our routine absolutely haywire. Schools offer routine, they inculcate a sense of discipline. And now with no schools, the routines have all gone. As parents, we need to maintain a schedule. A little bit, don't make it too rigid, don't make it military style. Having a routine also helps parents to create and organize their day. But when there's no routine, there's a confusion all over. When there's a routine, the child has more structure and this structure helps. 3, give the right information. The child has lots of questions and needs answers. And you need to sit with the child and talk. Give them proper facts. Don't frighten. Don't overemphasize the negative. Yes, COVID is dangerous, but also COVID is the least fatal of all the flus that we had. Explain the precautions that they must take and why. Discuss things with them. Don't just tell them. That's important. 4, offer personal space. We as adults will always resist when people don't give us the space that we want, but we don't realize that we don't give children space. We think that they need us, and so we are hovering over them all the time. It does not help. Being a helicopter parent really does not help. Give them space, let them move. Of course, make a little sure that they are safe. Often when we hover over them, it's not because the child needs us, it is to ease our own anxiety, not for the sake of the child. And finally, we need to engage, involve, and interact with our children. We need to build relationships with our children, and I'm sure you've heard this. Rules without relationships don't work. You can't just put in rules if you don't have some interaction or some relationship or some bond with your child. And the greater the bond, they will do it not because they're afraid of you, but because they don't want to disappoint you. And that makes more sense than imposing rules and punishments. Engage kids in different activities. And these become life skills for the children. There's a Harvard Grant study. It was the longest longitudinal study that was done. And the conclusion of that study was professional success, which we all want for our children, comes from having done chores as a kid. From having done work at home as a kid comes professional success. And the earlier you start, the better it is for the child. They learn what is required and volunteer to do it. They jump into it trying to sort of help. They learn teamwork. They have a sense of belonging when they do this. So it's important to get children involved. Children are vulnerable. They've got tender minds. They get affected easily. We cannot protect our children from all harm. And really, that is not necessary. Going through the ups and downs of life, children learn to become resilient. But we need to support them so that they can explore, move out in order to become more and more resilient. The pandemic has been an unprecedented situation. It has made anxiety and depression something very common. Children, now many of them don't know what normal is anymore. But if, because of this pandemic, they have developed a capacity to deal with something that is difficult, then this pandemic has been great. What we want is just that our children become more resilient, that our children become more tough, but they can do that if we help them to go through, to cope with, not rescue them, but help them to cope with the different things that they face in life. Let's make our children stronger in order to face a difficult future or whatever there is in store for them in future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Father Godfrey, for the gift of this inspiration. I loved your statement, there is no health without mental health. And with that, here's one question. It says, is it wise to refrain from talking too much about the pandemic to children? My brief understanding is that the pandemic may be outside us. We do not have to invite it inside us. With that sentiment, Father, can I have your reflections, please?
You're right, Mayor. I'm saying too much would always be bad. So when they say, is it talking too much about pandemic, even when they show on the news, suppose something bad has happened, an accident, and they repeatedly show this over and over again, it is not good for a tender mind. It stays inside like a photograph, and that has an effect. So no, we need to talk about reality. We need to say that there is this thing that is existing, but keeping on repeating, constantly watching news to find out what is happening is not necessary. Yeah.
Thank you. So another question that I have for you is that you are talking about depression, and there is something going on in this generation, what I like to say called constant instant gratification. And that constant instant gratification as an educator, I feel plays a lot of role in creating depression. A little girl who was just getting one meal a day was asked, sweetheart, if you were granted one wish, what would that be? And she said, even if I get to have only one meal a week, that I should still remain grateful for the blessing of that meal.
Wow.
It is in this attitude of gratitude that helps to build the altitude of life. To me, gratitude should be a part of our attitude, not apart from our attitude. Can we have some of your
Mayor,
intuition?
wonderfully said, wonderfully said. First thing you talked about instant gratification. No, this is our bane in today's society because there is so much available for us. No, and constantly giving in to whatever we desire is not healthy. What psychologists say, what all of us say, I'm saying even for spirituality, what is important is to control our senses and desires, and that is done by delayed gratification. No, not gratifying ourselves immediately, but being able to hold this and say, okay, let me take my time, we'll see when, etc., but not wanting it immediately. Today's children keep demanding for things at once, immediately, and parents think to make them happy, I got to gratify them. No, it's not necessary. And then the other thing that you spoke about, the attitude of gratitude. Yes, of course. No, if we are living in plenty, it's going to be difficult to be grateful. We need to realize that there are, first of all, for me, this pandemic has taught us that we can manage with so much less. We don't need all that we were accumulating. We can still live life pretty well without having all those things that we had before. No? So being grateful for what we have, learning to live with less. I read a beautiful book many years back called Unencumbered by Baggage. The less baggage you have, the better you can move in life. Yeah.
Thank you, Father, for the gift of your inspiration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all and to my good friend, Dr. Kumi Vivenia, for including me in this amazing feast of caring and sharing. Since I am from America, here is my message of hope from America for our future generation. President Joe Biden made a very profound statement during his inauguration celebration a few days ago. He said, "Let's lead not by the example of our power, but by the power of our example." I like to take this one step further by saying, let's live by the power of our example, not let's live by the example of our power, not by the power of our example, because eventually children become samples of our examples. And having said that, I would like to leave you all with this thought to ponder upon. In togetherness, we become limitless. I believe that education is the lifeblood of civilization. Thank you for being a part of this inspiration to create a transformation in our future generation. And with this note of gratitude, I would like to invite Dr. Kumi Vivena to propose a vote of thanks. Namaste and Ushtate to you all. And Ushtate means, may the divine bliss be with you all. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Meher. Thank you to our brilliant speakers of today, both Mr. Shraddalu Ranade and Father Guthrie. Interestingly, there was a thread connecting the two. And I think though your take on certain issues was very, very different, both of you seem to put the child at the center, importantly, and both have emphasized the need for self-awareness and self-regulation. Hugely important. Thank you very much. Many thanks also to the wonderful change facilitators, Ira, Reena, Anita, Priyasha, and Avinash. And to Mr. Meher Amal Saad for having so expertly anchored this session. Many thanks to the participants. Please step forward and ask to become action group members of Conscious Parenting led by Mr. Shraddalu Ranade and his team. The form is available on our website, as I mentioned earlier, and we plan to take about 10 people in, so rush and fill in the forms today itself. Next week, we are going to have some two important sessions. The first one, as I mentioned earlier, is by Mahera Desai, and Mahera is going to talk about the scars of shaming. The event is going to be anchored by Tanushri Singh. The last session of the summit is by Dr. Mark McLeod, and Dr. Mark McLeod is going to talk about the need to sensitize children to social justice issues. The person anchoring that session is going to be Ms. Kajol Menon, who is one of the leaders of child abuse in India. She has her own organization and she does a lot of work. And finally, Ms. Deepa Soman steps in to indicate the way forward from the management point of view and give us a few clues of how we should manage our action projects. So we do hope that you take advantage of this summit, the last two sessions, and you are present. The link is the same, the Zoom link for all the sessions. And if you do not receive the link, it's available on the homepage at www.gtpsforchange.org. If you have missed some sessions, or if you want others to see some of the sessions that have already taken place, please visit our website and go to the past events section. Importantly, like, follow, and share on our social media, on your social media handles. Take care, God bless, stay safe, and bye-bye.